our age of advanced technology.
And I'm doing great today, Dr. Ed. What's up?
People are naturally attracted to those who are authentic.
I always knew I would do something big. I knew I was built to do something special.
It led over time to a pretty dark place.
As soon as my feet hit the ground in the morning, I've made a choice not to stop unless I'm asleep.
I'm a 22-year overnight success.
How do I find the freaking jack to get to the next level?
All right, Laptop Lifestyle listeners, I have an incredible guest today, as usual. And this guest today is actually Ryan Michler of Order of Man. Ryan, how you doing today?
Ed, what's up, brother? Glad to be on the show, man.
This is going to be a ton of fun, man. I'm excited for this episode. And, for those who don't know who Ryan is, can you share a little bit about who you are as a person, but also, who you are as a business person and an entrepreneur as well?
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, as a person, I consider myself, like I said, first and foremost, a family man, father, a husband. That's the number one priority in my life. So everything that I do, all the decisions that I make on a daily basis when it comes to my business or the things that I'm doing in the community, all revolve around my family. That is critical for me. So I guess that's first and foremost. Outside of that, when it comes to business, I run a blog and podcast called Order of Man, where we're helping men become better leaders. So better leaders in their family, their communities, their businesses. And there's a whole backstory as to why we're doing that and why that's important and some of the struggles that I've had in my life. But it all comes back to family and me wanting to be the best husband and the best father and the best dad that I can possibly be.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I follow you on Facebook, stalk you a little bit on Facebook. So I saw that actually. Right on. Is today the first day of school for the kids?
For one of them. Yeah, my second child. My first child went to school last week. So yeah, we're getting them sent off for sure.
Well, I was a little worried. I got a little nervous. I'm like, oh, maybe we're gonna have to reschedule, but we made this happen.
Good.
I was glad.
No, we got it on the calendar, so we're good.
Yeah, good to go. So let's start getting tactical right away. I'd like to know, what was it that the impetus for the Order of Man? What was the calling? What was the pull for you?
Yeah, this goes back to the time I was a child. I grew up without a permanent father figure in my home. My dad was out of the picture by the time I was 3 years old. I had a couple other men come into my life as stepfathers who were what I would say less than stellar examples. There was glimpses, Ed. There was moments of I could see what a dad was supposed to be and how a dad was supposed to behave. But for the most part, I didn't have this male role model growing up, and I didn't know any better, frankly. And it really didn't hit home. It didn't really drive home as to what I was actually missing until I started having children, until I got married. And I realized, man, I don't have this stuff figured out. And it actually came to a point where my wife and I decided at one point that we were going to call it quits. And that was a hard time. I mean, that was probably the darkest time of my life, going through our separation. And for a long time, I blamed her. How could she do this to me? Why wasn't she doing the things that I think a good wife should be doing? And I blamed everything that I possibly could on her. And somewhere along the way, I literally woke up and realized, you know what? Maybe this is not her fault. There's always two to tango, yes, but maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not the man that I need to be. I'm not loyal to her, and I'm not dedicated to her, and I'm not doing the things that a husband should do with and for his wife. And that's really when I woke up, and this was roughly 7 years ago, and I went on a self-discovery journey, and I really tried to decide who I was and who I wanted to be, and I surrounded myself with great men. And it came to the point where I've built a financial planning practice over time that's done fairly successful and has done really well. And I decided, you know what, I've got something to add here. I want to throw my hat into the ring around this conversation about what it means to be a man, because there are so many men out there who are in the very same or very similar boat to the boat that I was. And I realized I could be a catalyst in these guys' lives.
This is an incredible conversation and incredible timing for me too, is because, I have an online business. Clearly I do. And this is why I created this podcast, to support people who are aspiring online entrepreneurs. And I'm a very pragmatic guy. I do a lot of trainings. It's a lot of point and click here. Do this. This is how you do it. Sure. Yeah. Step 1 to done. But the thing is, if you don't get people's, especially men or relationships, if you don't get their mindset in place, they're not going to get the same results. There's just not, the results are just not there. So I love what you're doing there with that. And so was this something that a lot of men were coming to you and asking for help with as well?
Not a whole lot, just because I wasn't having the conversation. And quite frankly, I was a little bit scared and a little bit nervous to have the conversation about the things that I struggled with. And of course, I don't want to ever call attention to the horrible father, the horrible husband I was. So I wasn't having these discussions. But like I said, I did come to the point where I realized, you know what, maybe there are some guys out there who can benefit from what I've learned. Long story short, my wife and I did save our marriage. We have been married this year for 12 years. We've got 4 kids. And I learned a lot. I mean, we still have struggles. We still go through hardships. We still argue or say mean things occasionally, but we're both quicker to forgive. We're both quicker to understand where the other partner is coming from. And I've learned a lot of valuable lessons about myself, and the things that I've learned about me in regards to my relationship have translated perfectly into my business and my health and all of the things that are important in my life. And as I started to have these conversations, and the things that I had done successfully, that's when guys started opening up to me, which allowed me and gave me an opportunity and an understanding that men needed to hear where we struggle as well. And so I started to get a lot more vulnerable about the things that I had struggled with, knowing or at least thinking that I would be open for critique and hate and some of those things that we just run across being in the online space. And I've run across that a little bit, but for the most part, it's been overwhelmingly positive from the men that we work with, but also the women in those men's lives, because what I'm seeing is that women want men to behave like men. They want them to be masculine. And so a lot of women have rallied around the causes that we have started and we're trying to lead as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the questions that I get often when entrepreneurs or online entrepreneurs are looking at getting into the space, they have this great idea. So you had a great idea. You had the heart to hustle it. I mean, what was the first thing that you did to start actually building the fans and the followers? Was it the podcast? Was that the first thing?
Yeah, so I started in March. Actually, somebody told me this on my podcast the other day because they had figured out the exact day that I launched the website. I didn't even know up until that point, but it was I think it's March 24th of 2015. So we've been going for about a year and a half, and I actually launched the podcast and the blog simultaneously, and I did it actually in coordination with a live event in Atlanta, Men's Style Con. I realized that some guys that I had been personally following for some time in the masculine space and how to be a better man, we're actually going to be at that event speaking. So I said, man, I got to get out there. So I flew out there and bought the hotel and bought the package for the conference. And I met these guys and I came back. And when I came back, I literally put an article together called 17 Sites Every Man Needs to Know About. And I did a blurb on each one of these quote unquote experts, these guys that I met, and what I learned from them and how valuable what they're doing is. And that article took off. I mean, it exploded. Within a matter of just a couple of days, it had seen over 50,000 views. And I mean, it just really took off, which was cool. And that's what actually launched and helped me catapult Order of Man to where it is today. So I put a lot of, I don't want to say blame, I was going to say blame, but just the fact that it's done so well because of that event I attended.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like an incredible blog to put together. And so you started building a following. You had this podcast that you started to create. And then what were the results that you've seen now, after a year and a half of doing your podcast? What are the results that you're seeing now from your podcast?
Well, so we will probably do 80,000 downloads this month on the podcast. So that's been good. The other benefit and the things that we're starting to see is we're really starting to see some high caliber guests come on. I had Jocko Willink, who's a Navy SEAL, Lewis Howes, who I'm sure everybody is familiar with him, came on, Hal Elrod with Miracle Morning, Jordan Harbinger with Art of Charm, all these guys everybody knows about because we have the audience and we have the credibility with these guys, and our community is very engaged. And we spend a lot of time, personally, I spend a ton of time in our closed Facebook group, which is a group of, I think we've got close to 6,500 men in there right now. And it is very, very active. Men are asking some very real and raw and honest questions about what it means to be a man. And it's really cool to see these guys rally around each other. And then, of course, we've got the blog following as well. But the podcast is what I enjoy. And that's why most of my attention is focused there.
Well, I'm a big fan of podcasting, clearly.
Sure.
I mean, that's how.
And so are the guys listening, right?
Of course. And I think it's one of the best ways for people to not just get a sense of actually who you are as a person, but to build your authority and to actually network and meet these people that, I've always looked up to, even like yourself. I mean, 180,000 downloads a month. That's insane numbers for people who don't listen to podcasts or aren't consuming. That's insane. But I mean, that's contribution. I mean, that's given back. Obviously, there's value. So there's a ton of reasons to be doing that, to be in that space of podcasting. So I'm going to step back and actually go back to our interview flow. We got a little tactical right away. And
sure.
What I want to ask you then, Ryan, is what would you say is your superpower? What is your unique perception? The one thing that you teach, that you provide value for, like no one else in the world can do?
Sure. The thing that I'm great at, and I've got to put this caveat too, the things that we're great at, we don't usually recognize, number one, but then they can also be our weaknesses. So I want to throw that out there and just make sure everybody understands that. But the things that I teach a lot is the thing that I'm actually really good at, and that's taking action. There are too many people out there who have great ideas and insights and strategies and things they want to do and a vision for the future, but very few people are actually willing to act upon that information. And that might be out of fear or scarcity, or maybe a sense of responsibility or obligation that they can't go do this thing that they want to do. And if there's one thing that is going to separate anybody who's listening, including Ed, you and me, from the rest of the pack, it's the ability to take action. I've never met anybody who doesn't have an idea of what their future looks like. But again, it's few and far between on the people who are actually willing to do something about it. So that's where I excel, almost to a detriment at times, but I'd rather make a mistake doing than just sitting on the fence doing nothing.
Are you a perfectionist?
No, not at all.
So you ship it.
I'd rather do that. I mean, I know it's never going to be perfect. Never. You could spend as much time, money, energy, resources as you want, and it's never going to be perfect. And so, there's going to be times where I might put together a blog post a little hurriedly, and somebody will come back and say, oh, your grammar's out of whack or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, you read it and you learned something from it. And I'd rather do that than knowing that, oh, maybe I messed up on a sentence structure, or maybe my pricing wasn't right, or the video lighting wasn't perfect. That doesn't matter to me. We can fix that stuff along the way.
Yeah. And I mean, that even applies to even say this podcast today. I have some notifications going off. I'm in an echoey room. I mean, but you know what? If the value's there, people will listen. And it is all about shipping. It's about content. It's about value. What would you say is your weakness? What is your kryptonite?
Probably the opposite of that, which would be that I'm not very good with the details. Like, I don't really enjoy getting into that stuff. I call it the minutia. It's still important. I can see that it is important, and having the flows and the work structures and the systems. I could see how that's valuable, but it's just nothing that I really enjoy all that much. So knowing that and being very aware of what I'm strong at and what I'm weak at, I've brought people in to help me with some of those systems, because I do recognize they need to be done. Although I also recognize I don't want to be the one doing it. And
so, I mean, you're essentially helping men be better men, right?
Sure.
I mean, yeah.
Sure.
And like, would you say, like, again, we'll go back to that word perfect. I mean, would you say like you have the perfect marriage?
Oh, no. I mean, that doesn't even exist, right? I don't have the perfect marriage. I'm not the healthiest guy in the world. I like burgers. I like ice cream. My business isn't the most productive or profitable in the world. Sometimes I yell at my kids when I shouldn't. I mean, I'm a normal man. Okay. So the only thing that separates me and even qualifies me to do this work is that I'm on a lifelong journey to become a better man myself. And I'm willing to have the conversations about it. And I'm willing to tell it like it is, even if it means that I'm not the best or that I'm having a bad day. I did a video the other day about how I failed my son. That's not something I felt like I wanted to share and tell the world about how bad of a father I was in the moment. But it's critical I do that stuff because other men are feeling and experiencing the same things I am. And most of us are afraid to share it. And if I can share it, even to some degree, I can help some other man have a better relationship with his children or his wife or in his community or business or whatever it is that he's wanting to accomplish.
Yeah. I mean, as a man, as a father, as a provider, I mean, there's so many different things that I look in my life and I go, man, I'm failing. This is just not working.
Yeah.
But, since I've been in groups such as, Order of Man or, I did Wake Up Warrior with Garrett J. White. Yeah.
Sure,
I mean, and I learned, you know what? I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who's messed up on the inside. Maybe we're just a little different in our own ways, but we all working on this, and no one's perfect. And it's a beautiful message. And I think that, more men need to be real about that and talk about it. And I think it's relatable to our discussion today as part of a business. I mean, do you think that, your relationships at home, and the success of that affects the success of you as an entrepreneur and a business person?
Oh, of course. I mean, here's the bottom line. If somebody's trying to improve in their life, what I would suggest is that you should find the lowest hanging fruit. All right. Because if you can find the lowest hanging fruit, the thing that's easiest for you to improve, it's going to naturally improve every other area of your life. The scenario that I use is roughly 3 years ago, I weighed 50 pounds more than what I weigh today. And I remember sitting in a parade, knowing that I was fat and out of shape and lazy and tired and no energy. And somebody in the parade came by and gave me a flyer for a CrossFit gym. And I said, you know what? I know I need to do something. And there's a whole other backstory to that. But for the sake of time, I went to that gym. It was their grand opening, and I went to that gym. And I have not looked back for 3 years. I've lost 50 pounds. I've done Spartan races. I did a 60-hour endurance event. I just signed up for a Go Ruck in January. It's become a lifestyle. But what's amazing about that, as beneficial as it's been, is that my relationships are better. My businesses are stronger. I'm happier. I'm more fulfilled because the things that you need, the skills and the abilities and the talents and the habits that you need to be successful in one area of your life, and in this case, health, translate perfect over into other areas. So discipline, commitment, dedication, hard work, doing things that you don't want to do when you don't want to do them. That is a perfect metaphor for life, which is why I think you can't make decisions in a vacuum. If you improve in one area, every other area of your life will improve.
Right. Or you could actually, and then this is my experience, was when I focused too much on my business and not enough on my relationships, my marriage, my health, my business actually collapsed down to the lowest common denominator. It suffered. Yeah. But when every dimension, when I improved, everything in my life just changed. And honestly, it time traveled. I mean, what's happened for me and my wife over the last 24 months, when we've actually acknowledged that and became self-aware of that, it's been insane, the results that we've been seeing. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's a huge, huge knowledge bomb. So what would you say is the thing that the one critical misunderstanding that a listener who's listening right now, they might have of, moving into the online world, the online business space? What's the critical misunderstanding?
That it has to be perfect, that you have to have it all figured out, that you have to know how to do everything, or even that you have to do it all. I think that is a huge mistake that people make. And what it ends up doing is it ends up causing people to freeze up, to sit on the fence and not do anything because they're so concerned about, well, this guy says to do it this way and Ed said this way, but then Ryan told me to do it this way. It's like, it doesn't matter. Just pick one. I've seen thousands of people start online businesses and do it in 1,000 different ways. And I've seen an infinite number of combinations to equate to success. So don't sit the sidelines, just start doing it and understand that you're going to have to put in a lot of work at first. That's what I did. I have a financial planning practice. I was putting in 40 hours a week, and then I was doing 20 hours a week roughly with Order of Man. And because I was willing to put in that time and I was very clear and I communicated with the people who had a vested interest in my time, for example, my family, my kids and my wife, I communicated effectively with them. I was able to take the time and put it in, but not sit on the sidelines, not just try to pretend like I was doing things, but actually start doing the work required to be successful.
And this all comes back and circles back on the discussion that we're having today. If you took action, you probably took the lowest hanging fruit in the business right away. And then also, in terms of timeline, you've been doing this for a while, so you've been pretty patient in terms of getting results as well. What would you say was the timeline though, before you actually started feeling this was a business? You started actually, having a profit?
Well, so I never started with the goal of just doing this as a hobby. I think that's first and foremost is I don't want it to be a hobby. I've got enough hobbies. If I wanted to do a hobby, I'd go work in my shop and do woodworking, or I'd do some more CrossFit stuff, or I'd go shooting with my kids. So I didn't want this to be a hobby. So I think that's first and foremost. You've got to understand, okay, what do I want? Like, do I want this just to be a hobby? Do I want this to be just for fun? There's nothing wrong with that, but you just have to identify, is that what you want? It isn't what I wanted. So I really focused on, how can I turn this into a business? So I researched and I saw what other guys were doing and monetization strategies. And the initial monetization strategy that I thought I would go with was an advertising strategy, which, for every visitor or for every podcast listener, companies would pay me to advertise their products and their wares and their services. And I quickly switched from that, knowing that I could have more meaningful discussions. And so we created a mastermind group. We've got over 100 guys in that group right now, and we're having some deep and meaningful conversations that are going to improve their life. So if you're asking me the short answer of when did I know, from the very beginning, I knew that I could turn this into a business because I saw other people doing it, although I wasn't quite certain on the track or the road that I would go down to make that work.
Ryan, how many hours a week do you put into your business right now?
Probably 30.
Okay.
Now I know. So this is what's really weird. Okay. So, and this is something that separates me from a lot of guys. Number one, I don't want to hustle. Okay. I don't even like that word. I don't want to work 60 hours. I don't want to work 100 hours. I'm not downplaying the importance of that. If that's your goal, if that's anybody else's goal, that's great. That's not my goal. My goal is to have calmness, to have clarity, to have margin in my life, and to spend time with my kids and my wife. So if I could do it in 10 hours, I would do that. So if somebody's listening and says, well, I want to work 30 hours a week, great, do that. Or if somebody says, well, I really like working 60 hours a week and hustling and do it, great, do that. But I want to be real with you. I don't want to make it sound like I spend 100 hours and I don't sleep at night and I don't ever see my family because I've got this passion and dream. That's not my dream. And so I've got to be real and say, I put in 30, 35 hours a week, and the rest of the time I'm spending doing the things that are important to me, which is being with my family. And
you know what's important to you, though. That's
right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I've done it over the last 12 months, even, 18 months, got the big house, the nice cars, great vacations, whatever I want to do. And I worked and hustled my ass off for that. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, what I realized was, it's not about the house. It's not about the cars. It's not about the vacations. It's about the time and the quality of time that you have with your family. That's what it's come back for me. I want to just be here so I can get up in the morning and connect with my kids.
Yeah.
And then I want to be there at night to put them to bed. That was really that's what I love about this lifestyle that we've created.
Yeah. So, I completely agree. I mean, I wake up, I do my workout, I come home, I have some scripture study with my family. We eat breakfast together. I start working at 9 o'clock. I close my office down. I said, no, I'm going to have my office at home. And so my kids are welcome to come down here and ask me a question. I go up at noon. I just got back before this interview from eating lunch with my family. My kids will get done at 3 o'clock this afternoon with school, and I'll go play with them. And that's what I want. And so I've created a life around the vision of having space and margin to do those things, which I've identified as important. Not anybody else, not any internet guru, what I have decided is important for me.
And at this point, do you feel like you've made it? Is there something that's new on the horizon that we should be looking for Order of Man?
So yeah, that's a really good question. As far as made it, I don't know if I'll ever make it. I am content. I will say that I am content. I am fulfilled, but that doesn't mean that I don't want more. I do. I certainly do. And so we are going to be releasing or launching in the next 30 days our very first live event. We've filled that up. We've sold that out. We are going to be doing a men's conference come early 2017. We've got some product lines, clothing and hats and things as well. So there's always something on the horizon, which is what I need. Like, I need something to engage my curiosity, engage my mind. So we're always doing something new and testing and seeing what works and seeing what guys like. There's talks of even doing Order of Man chapters, regional and local chapters. So we've always got something going on. But again, I'm never going to do it at the expense of being with my family.
And what's the best place that listeners can actually find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so our headquarters is orderofman.com. So you can go there. You can find out everything that you need to find out. If there's any men who are listening who are interested, in more about what we're doing, we've got that Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups order of man. And between those two resources, you'll find everything that we're up to.
Outstanding. So listeners, you can head over to thelaptoplifestylepodcast.com, and we'll actually have clickable links and a webpage dedicated to our discussion with Ryan Michler of the Order of Man today. And if you're listening on your mobile, you can actually go ahead and open those show notes and connect with Ryan immediately from your mobile phone. Ryan, incredible. I mean, I love what you're doing here, but you know what? I love the discussion, not just from an aspect of business, but from an aspect of creating a lifestyle. So
Sure.
That's what we're here to talk about, is the laptop lifestyle, right? So it really
Absolutely makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I think an important note too from this discussion today for listeners would be that what you believe you want or to want to achieve today may not be the same as what your goals or your targets are, say 6, 12 months from now.
Sure. And just the ability to recognize that, and then the ability to take action on it, to change, to realize that it's okay that I have a new direction. It's okay that life has changed. It's okay that I've thought about something new, or I've heard something new, or I've been exposed to new information. And so my way of thinking about things is different. I think it's you owe it to yourself to explore those things and then create the life you want to create.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Appreciate you being on the Laptop Lifestyle Podcast today and giving back.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate you, brother.
Hey, I want to thank you for listening today. And if you're new to the podcast, head over to thelaptoplifestylepodcast.com and hear more from 6, 7, and 8-figure online entrepreneurs. Even better, head over to iTunes, give us a rating and review, and that will help us help more aspiring online entrepreneurs. Appreciate you, and see you on the next Laptop Lifestyle Podcast.